Welcome to Nasdaq TradeTalks. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. We're coming to you live from Mainnet 2024 by Messari. Joining me for this segment, we have Jack Purdy, Director of Sales. We're going to discuss why crypto is being driven by the numbers, not narratives. Jack, it is great to have you with us. Welcome to TradeTalks. And before we get into that, I want to talk about the platform for a moment here. Sometimes you're known as the Bloomberg of crypto with so much data and research that lives on the Messari platform.
Yes. Yeah, I think we've kind of got that like Bloomberg moniker from the start, just because people like to draw sort of parallels right to the traditional finance world of, okay, when you think about like a sort of full service like market intelligence platform, like what does that look like? And right in crypto, since right you don't really have a baseline of right the SEC's EGR database of financial reporting, we've sort of had to bootstrap that ourselves and get all the data analytic capabilities and then research on top.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's fascinating. You guys just launched Messari Copilot. I mean, all the data that lives on that platform to be able to develop a Gen AI platform off of that is truly exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, and so sort of the thinking there is like, right, ChatGPT is great, but right, if you're trying to get very nuanced responses, particularly around crypto, where there's not a ton of like high fidelity information out there, and so it's trained based on that. But given kind of the fact that right, we've been around for 7 years and have just this like library of data we've been providing to enterprise customers, being able to have an AI trained specifically on that customers can then query to get very kind of granular questions answered that normally would take 5, 10, 20 minutes just searching around on a platform to find, you can kind of get like that.
Yeah, let's talk about the thought that the crypto is going to be driven by numbers, not the narratives. To me, that suggests that the industry is maturing and we're starting to see some stabilization there.
Yeah, so that's been like our thesis long term, that like over time, as more sophisticated investors get involved, investment decisions are going to be driven by hard data, not just narratives. And when I first joined back in the day when Messari was getting founded, like there wasn't much data to exist, right? Like Ethereum launched, there was a couple applications on top, but there wasn't a lot of real activity. So a lot of market prices were driven by narratives of, hey, this is addressing that TAM, and so we're going to price it based off that. But that's a sort of naive approach. And so what we've been seeing, right, is DeFi is maturing, and now okay, we're getting more tangible data where right you can look at a lending platform and say, hey, this is how many loans are originated, and then the interest rate revenue on top of that these tokens that they act as sort of pseudo equity, their value is then derived from this on-chain data. So like we've really doubled down on building out these deep on-chain data capabilities to then help paint that story of hard data and fundamentals versus just kind of pie in the sky ideas.
Right. Well, what's so fascinating? We are literally living through the evolution of the DeFi space right now. Like when I came into the industry, the equity space was established at that point. Decades and centuries of trading behind it. What I think is so interesting, it's happening in real time, and you also bring up the point where you can build crypto with its unique strengths. You don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel, right?
Yes.
So tell us more how that fits into the industry's evolving as we sit here.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we sort of do on like the Messari Protocol Services side, it's kind of like an outsourced investor relations arm where we're able to step in and do like quarterly financial reporting for these protocols, right? Like oftentimes they're sort of too busy building to report about what they're building, and again, there's no SEC mandate to submit 10Qs and 10Ks. So that's something we realized like this is a must-have for the industry to mature, and so I think we took a lot of parallels from the TradFi world of like, okay, what would a 10Q look like, right? Where you have the business overview, the risk factors, the financial statements, and porting that over. And so, like, what does that look like for a crypto protocol? And so I think combining a lot of lessons from what has been done in the past, but now in this new crypto native manner.
Which is so interesting. I've been covering the space since 2018, which is a long time, from a media perspective. And I would say this year at Mainnet in particular, the phrase protocol governance has come up frequently. And for me, that's encouraging when you start to hear, quality, structured data, governance, framework. These are the conversations that we're having relative to evangelizing the space. but you can see how the conversations around this have matured when governance is at the forefront.
Totally, yeah, and that's something that I'd say even over like the last couple of years has made like leaps and bounds of progress, where right the whole ethos of crypto, right, is that like these should be, you know, decentralized kind of like autonomous organizations where it's mostly existed in theory, right, where in practice it's kind of just like the core dev team, they spin up the protocol, they launch it, like they're still pulling the strings. But we've seen a lot of, you know, what we call like progressive decentralization, where they'll start opening up different facets of the protocol where, you know, say we're a DeFi lending platform, then maybe the different like parameters around kind of the risk framework can be overtaken by like a service provider, and governance can then vote and say, hey, here who we think are kind of the best service providers to do that, and have a democratic process to, you know, have these service providers come in, right? So it's like these different key decisions now are no longer being driven just by the core team, and, you know, you can actually tangibly have you know, a decentralized organization. So
it certainly is encouraging, Jack. Appreciate the insight. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks, and thanks for joining me from Mainnet. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.
awesome.